huge news. Just breaking, James Hooper a little earlier, that Lachlan Galvin has told people close to him that he's going to the Bulldogs. He's played his last game for the West Tigers. Hoops, we've got to unpack just the enormity of this, where everybody initially thought Parramatta was going to be the destination for Lachlan because of the relationship has his management with Isaac Moses and Mitchell Moses. I'm shocked. I really am. And look, it makes a little sense now with Toby Sexton that there was no commitment. There hadn't been, when asked about him, there hadn't been a conclusive answer around whether or not he was going to get a contract. But in the enormity of signings, this is a massive story, and I suppose it throws up the complexities. And Gordie touched on it earlier. Where does he start? Jamie, you think he should start at 14 and work his way into this side? But all roads would point to that he'll be the 7 and Burton will be the 6.
I think down the road, the plan is that Lachie will most likely wear the Bulldogs number 7 jumper. But just on the issue itself, if you go back to when the story first blew up, I think it was about 6 weeks ago, where Lachie and his agent walk into Shane Richardson's office, and Richo tables, what was a hugely significant offer. I think it was $6 million, an upgrade on his existing deal and a 5-year extension. And the agent says, don't even bother because we don't want to stay here. Well, off the back of that, that then generated all sorts of headlines, of which one of the biggest was an out-and-out refuted denial from Gus Gould that the Bulldogs would not be pursuing Lachlan Galvin. They had not been interested. It had never been a conversation. It hadn't been on the radar. In fact, let's take a listen.
We're not thinking about Lachlan Galvin. We've never at any stage been involved in any discussion regarding Lachlan Galvin. And we're not going to get into a discussion about Lachlan Galvin. He's not on our radar.
Wow,
that is the right thing to say at the time for the football club.
But what I wonder,
I don't know why.
No, what I wonder, Jammer, what I wonder is, right, because like I say, the first newspaper column that appeared about this must have been 2.5, 3 months ago. And it was Lachlan Galvin's decision is going to be all about coaching, not money, where he can get the best football development. And as soon as I was reading that, because often when you read things and you work in the media, you're often trying to join the dots about, hold on a minute, who's come up with this concept? And I wonder where that's coming from. And as I was doing it, I just thought, geez, this sounds like the Bulldogs. This sounds as though, so I'm not suggesting that there was anything untoward going on, but for a figure like Gus, he's obviously hugely influential, holds significant roles in the media, and he has just downplayed it and hosed it the entire time. Yet at the same time, he was also talking the kid up deluxe for a good 18 months.
He said whichever team has Lachie Galvin in their roster
will be winning multiple
premierships. So I'm imagining with his role at the Bulldogs, he wants to see them win multiple premierships. So then therefore you go and sign the player that you've put this big rap on. Look,
it's genius, but how do we feel? And Dob, I'll ask you, how do you feel about Gus in his role as one of the biggest members in the media in rugby league, publicly pushing one message, and he's got a couple of mouthpieces that he normally uses to go and get whatever those messages are out, yet then clearly behind the scenes, and especially since Lachlan Galvin's been given permission to negotiate, doing the complete opposite.
Well, it seems to be the way of the world in rugby league now, doesn't it? You almost... he was so adamant. Could have there been a change of heart?
No, I don't think so.
We all want transparency and we all want the truth. But at the end of the day, you've got to say what's right for the club at the time. And look, Shane Richardson said, and we're not going to let Lachie Galvin go before his contract's up. Was he lying, or was he saying the right message because he knew the ramifications of actually saying, you know what, we need to get him out of the joint? And this is what people in charge of the club do. Look, people think, oh, you've got to be honest. Or,
that's cool. I get how it goes,
It's the game within the game, isn't it? Yep. And because if you go back then, if Gus even says something along the lines of, where the Bulldogs were interested in any marquee player or any high-quality player that becomes available, which is a bit of a throwaway line from a number of clubs at the time, that just goes everywhere. The ramifications at the club there and then for the next 4 to 5 weeks. When if it's an unknown, I think it sometimes is best to to play it down. Now that it's a bit more certain, I think now that's when the club speak. But when it's an unknown, if Gus says anything that even opens the door slightly,
Gemma,
the ramifications and it runs everywhere, when he closes it down, nothing to see here. And maybe that was right. That's the right thing to do for the club with results in mind at that moment in time.
No, but
Gemma,
what
I'm
about
old
this?
enough and ugly enough to know how it rolls, right? I totally get it. I get why Richo had to do the road that he went down, and I understand why the Bulldogs have played this the way that they have, because now in reality they have ended up with the best scenario for the club. But at the same time, in future, and we've seen this previously anyway with things that Gus has said, like I raised the Trent Barrett comment earlier, right? There are numerous examples. I've forgotten them all. There's that many of them, right? But you could go back over them. In future, when Gus sprays the media and just says that's garbage, scuttlebutt, horse shit, made up, whatever, well, in fairness, people are going to be entitled to go, well, is it?
Hoops,
Well,
what
that-
about
that's
this?
it.
What about this?
But
What
you
about
know
this
what we-
scenario in the sense that they were linked to Cherry Evans as well. Remember the Bulldogs, and so the Bulldogs came out and said, look, we are not chasing daily Cherry Evans. Initially, when Phil Gould's come out and said this, could it be potentially that they didn't believe that they were a chance? So rather than being linked, because it is a bad look, and I don't like to bring the Dolphins have gone after many players and they've rejected it. And in the end, that becomes a habit. Players, they never go there. So is it potentially Phil Gould protecting the club by saying, mate, we've got no interest in these players because there hadn't been an appetite from Galvin? Or do you think that this breaking of the bread between Isaac Moses and Phil Gould earlier on in the year, there's been obviously a lot going on behind the scenes that we were completely unaware of, and this is why this deal got done and the denials were there?
Well, Gus is publicly courting of Galvin. Gus's public courting of Galvin and the way that he serenaded him by waxing lyrical with praise that, I mean, and Gus is a far better football judge, infinitely better football judge than I am. But to say he thinks he's the best teenager he's ever seen, like I'm old enough and ugly enough to remember Freddie Fittler and Laurie Daly and Bradley Clyde and those style of players. And to me, they were better players in my eyes than what Lachie is. But clearly there's been an end goal in mind. And you raise a great point, Dobbo, about the fact that, you know, previously the Bulldogs were a club who had put the pen through Isaac Moses. So you've got the Sydney Roosters who've put the pen through him. You've got the Canberra Raiders who've put the pen through him. And you had Canterbury Bankstown who put the pen through him. But over the course of the summer, I don't know exactly what happened, but there was a thawing of the ice and some breaking of bread. And all of a sudden, they are prepared to negotiate. And now Lachie Galvin lands at the Bulldogs.
And
so
it's the game within the game.
It is, Gemma. I'm not bagging it.
All is fair. You've got to play the situation. You've got to play the game. You've got to leverage. You've got to exploit. You've got to take advantage of these positions. You've got to go on X and go on shows and declare you're out when you're really in. That is just...
You know who's going to be fascinating on this is Buzz Rothfield, because he's coming on this show at 3:00. And if there's one bloke who has a long and decorated history with Gus, it's Buzz, and I'm sure that he's going to have an extremely strong take on it.
And let's talk about Queensland, Gordie. And firstly, your take on that side that they selected.
It's good.
Yep.
Yeah, like obviously it's well balanced. There's a few guys I'd love to have Tommy Gilbert in there. I just think, you know, he's been injured the last couple of years. You'd love to see Tommy Flegler, you know, back, obviously playing NRL, but I really like our side having Tino. You don't realise how much we missed him last year.
Yep.
Having Cameron Munster, that guy that, you know, I still go down to that play over in Perth when, you know, I think we were behind and he skips outside Cleary and hits Tabuai Fado and he goes around, and then Lindsay Collins out jumps Tedesco. Like, having someone like Munster when the games are even, a bit like happened last year, and you get Luai and, you know, Mitchell Moses grabbing those moments, and to have someone like Munster that doesn't carry his divots and can help DCE, and I really like it. Like, I really like our side. Last year I thought we were a little bit small. That New South Wales in Game 2 showed us pretty much that if you turn up just a little bit down or without the right attitude, what can happen to you in this arena. But if we play the way we did in Game 3 last year, I'm confident that Queensland will put themselves in there with a fight.
Gordie, is it fair to say that Queensland's two most important players are back in Munster and Tino? Like Tino for the pack and Munster for those moments of brilliance.
I'm not saying that we didn't have a leader, because Reuben Cotter and Lindsay Collins and those guys did a fantastic job last year, but I just think sometimes you just have that guy, and it's, going to a knife fight with a gun, and that's what Tino brings. He's a big guy. You watch him, he'll stand up to Payne Haas. No one intimidates him. He's just a big, aggressive, strong guy, and having his teammate there and Mo and Bo Thurmer and Lindsay Collins and those guys, I think, and Paddy Carrigan, I think Tino would give those guys confidence. And I heard Darley Cherry Evans say right at the beginning of the week, it's like we got a security guard back. He's just there, and having Munster, forwards I think forwards win every big game and backs determined by how much. And Munster's one of those guys that can determine the scoreline. He's just he's going to test you. Those games when you pop up where it's tight, where defence is tight, they start to read the systems, they read the play. They've done. We listened to Matt King talking about all the defensive and the attacking structure, and you just see someone like Cam Munster that just jumps in and out of shape, in and out of structure, and floats. And he's going to test them. So if there's any tired New South Wales guy, if we get a roll on and Harry Grant gets our boys rolling through the middle, Munster, Tabuai-Fidow, like I just picture Munster going to the line with Tabuai-Fidow and Ponga at the back. There's a fair bit of attack on one side there, and a bit of skill and a bit of speed.
I probably, and I don't understand why, but the Cobbo issue still keeps on coming up around selection. I just want you to have a look, and obviously this has come to light. He wasn't selected. He wasn't selected. Just have a listen. This is Michael Chammas and Danny Wilder on Thursday on the Journo Show here on Triple M.
When he reported last year that their coaching staff and Selwyn Cobbo weren't seeing eye to eye, it caused a huge drama in Origin week leading up to the final game of the series. And he was bagged for, I think it was labelled as fake news by Billy Slater. But we fast forward 10 months. There's an injury to Murray Taulagi. And instead of picking Selwyn Cobbo, who's been cleared of a fractured wrist, Billy Slater picks a debutant who's played 10 games in Robert Toya. And it just got me thinking back to last year and the egg that was on Danny's face, or some of the people that were trying to throw egg at Danny's face. And I look back and think perhaps the big man was on the money.
Well, it's mysterious, to say the least, isn't it? I stand by that story. Absolutely had the Mickey taken out of me and continue to have that happen to me. And that's no concern to me because I know it's right. I know he's fit. I've been told that there's not an injury there. So I don't think there's been a satisfactory or suitable explanation as to what's gone on. But you won't hear anyone who bagged the story suddenly change it.
Yeah, okay.
What did he say? You won't hear anybody that bagged the story.
Say it's right.
Because it's not right. Because it is fake news. We all know where it come from. This is the funny thing, right? So they got away with it last year. So I don't want to give them up, but they got away with it last year. I don't know why they doubled down on it. There is nothing, right? And if these guys want to talk about mental health, right, so then they'll sit there and they'll talk about it. There is nothing wrong with Selwyn Cobbo and Billy Slater. We all know where it got brought up. Every journalist got told the story and it didn't stack up. So I know where it come from. So I would challenge both of those journalists, right, to go ask the bloke who told them whether they want me to say it, because I'm happy to say it. I'd be so happy to say it and say, this is who said it. This is where it come from. No other journalist that's been working on the game from 40 years to 20 years thought the story stacked up and there was no truth to it whatsoever. That's the sad part. And now they keep on doing it to a young kid.
Right.
And they're wrong. This is a guy, this is a journalist, right, that sits there and doesn't stand up for himself and go on a show when a player. And now he still wants to have a little dig at another young kid. Leave him alone. Seriously, leave him alone. It is fake. You're bullshitting, right? You're bullshitting and you're putting people under pressure when you know it's wrong. And you're sitting there to say that you save a bit of face. and it's rubbish. It's absolutely rubbish, and I know that. And that's what pisses me off, that we're in a game that these guys can sit there and fabricate something last year because they got asked to fabricate it. It didn't stand up. No one wanted to write it. And then 12 months later, they bring it up and say that they're right when they weren't.
Well, I suppose it's because Selwyn wasn't selected. But
Selwyn wasn't selected probably because he's not playing good enough.
Well, if you look at that
So
Queensland
that.
side, Gordie, if you look at that Queensland side, you got Xavier Coates on one wing, you got Val Holmes on another, and you got the Hammer and Robert Toyer in the centres. So,
And Selwyn got moved from a New South Wales State of Origin coach from fullback to the wing, and we can't carry that. We can't. Some kids can't carry injuries. They just can't. You get people that, like I played with Shane Webke, that played 3 weeks after breaking his arm. You get someone like Alan Langer that plays it. You get someone like Jonathan Thurston. You get someone like Cameron Smith that can play 400 games. You get Jimmy Graham that plays 400 games. You get some guys that don't play with injuries. For some reason, it's in their back of their mind and it doesn't bring out their best. They've got to feel really good. And if it's in racehorsing, they've got to always feel like they're at the top of the game. And maybe Selwyn is that. But it's not because he's got a problem with Billy Slater.
if it was true, and obviously Billy Slater, the Queensland coach, has labelled it fake news 12 months ago, I'm not sure why the blokes who are trying to spin this yarn have decided it's a good idea to bring it back up again and try and fluff each other's dusters under the table and all that sort of thing. It was put to bed at the time. If it was true, well, they needed to stack it up at the time, and they need to either get Selwyn Cobbo on the record about it, some of his other Queensland teammates confirming that it's true, or Billy Slater. And Billy was very strong about the fact that it was fake news at the time. Dobbo, I think you asked him that question at that press conference, and I don't think we've ever seen Billy on the front foot as much as that. And I mean, the other element of it is that it's out of the Channel 9 camp, because Billy is one of the faces of the Nine Network.
Well, why would they do that to their own?
I don't know. I can't answer that, Gordie. But Billy's one of the most respected figures.
And said, hey, Billy, this is what we've heard. Hey, Selwyn, this is what we've heard. Don't you do that?
I can't answer. I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
like,
Maybe they did. I don't know.
Like, I mean, like if you go, hey, mate, are you okay? I heard that you had a fight with you, whatever. Don't you stack it up like that?
Well, yeah, the fact that it's been brought up again is disappointing.
Have you heard the rumours?
No.
Do you believe they're true?
No.
Well, let's go back. Let's go back.
They're true.
Let's go back to. Let's go back to last Sunday, right? We were at the Dragons Broncos game.
Mm-hmm.
Cobbo clearly looked injured.
He did.
He moved positions.
Well, they were strapping his wrist constantly throughout the game.
So there was clear just on this Origin Series selection. So Sunday at around about 4:00, end of the game, Cobbo looked distressed, looked injured, looked like he was really probably should have been taken off, but due to the fact that the desperation in the Broncos, they left him out there injured, and he moved from fullback to wing. So there was clearly an issue that needed to be resolved before you name that team. So I look at it at the point of view of, if Billy Slater's got to name that team, and if it's a decision between Cobbo, and then if he's out, you move Val to the wing and you bring in Robert Toyer. You can't say to Robert Toyer, you're on standby. You need to put the belief in him that he is playing State of Origin. He's earned this spot. You can't have him playing backup and then we'll figure out later in the week. I think it's more to do with that rather than anything else. I think we've completely overlooked the fact that Cobbo had a genuine injury consent, like genuine. And then what do you do with this youngster coming? Let's not forget, he's played 10 games. He's going into the biggest game of his life. He needs to be absolutely full of confidence going in, not, am I in, am I not? I'll wait. It's like, no, Robert, you're in. Cobbo, sorry about the injury, you're not in.
I've got an interview here, and this is why I'm not like James Hooper, who, if you're just joining us, has broken the story that Lachlan Galvin has been informing teammates that and family members he'll be joining the Bulldogs. But I interviewed Val Holmes on Monday. I said to Val, I thought you were going to be in the centres. He says, I was rung last week, but with Cobbo injured and Murray Tuolungi, Billy rang me last night and said, mate, you're going to go to the wing. Now, that's Val Holmes who's been selected. So, clearly, they had planned on Selwyn or Murray Tuolungi being on the wing. Val said it. I've got it on record. I'm happy to play it. I don't know why I didn't play it earlier for you guys, but
Cobbo, can I ask? Why do you think these blokes from Channel 9? Why have they brought this up again?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Well, clearly because they believe it's true. Now, they are of the belief that they believe it's true because
But you want to know where it come from? We know where it come from. They don't want that together. That's why I'll just challenge them again. Go to the bloke who told you and tell me whether he wants it out.
Hoops, Jammer, and the great Buzz Rothfield. Hello, Buzz. How are you, mate?
I'm really good, mate. Look, I've already written this down after Hoops broke the story. I went online. I looked at the NRL draw. West Tigers versus Bulldogs. It's round 22. Luai versus Galvin. Sunday, August 3, 2 o'clock kickoff. Cannot wait.
Neither can I. Look, huge news. Galvin to leave the West Tigers effective immediately. James Hooper broke this story. He'll join the Bulldogs immediately. As we speak, and we might try and get the audio, we have Phil Gould talking on Channel 9. He is speaking at the moment on their lead into their 4 o'clock show. So we might try and get some of that audio, exactly what he said. But this is Phil Gould 4 weeks ago. This is what he said when put to that potentially they might be interested in Lachlan Galvin.
We're not thinking about Lachlan Galvin. We've never at any stage been involved in any discussion regarding Lachlan Galvin, and we're not going to get into a discussion about Lachlan Galvin. He's not on our radar.
Well, clearly he was. Buzz, I'll go to you first up. Were you shocked when Hoops broke this story this afternoon that the Bulldogs had got their man?
Oh, look, I thought they'd been the favourites probably the last 48 hours. If you'd asked me a week ago, I thought Parramatta were going to get him. Yeah, but Hoops, great story. Look, when Gus, said what he did, and it's a complete backflip, isn't it? And look, what surprised me is that Gus has been saying for some time now that his plan was to spend a lot of money, and they've spent millions on their pathways, and they've built strong Harold Matts, SG Ball. He was going to rebuild that club from within. Then they go out and sign Leo Thompson, and now they've got Galvin on board. And my view is that it is going to create now a lot of uncertainty over the future of a number of players there. They say Connor Tracy has lost the fullback spot. Burton is going to go to fullback and Galvin at 5'8". Where does it leave Toby Sexton? Where does it leave someone like Reid Marnie, the hooker? Because Bailey Haywood, I think, is the long-term hooker. So we've got a football side that without Galvin, without Leo Thompson, had won 9 of 11, high-flying at the top of the ladder. I can just see a little bit of an unsettling effect here for the reasons I've just explained.
Well, each and every team, though, Buzz, would go through natural progressions in squad, additions, people moving on for different reasons. I think if you were to look at the Dogs team, there is money there available. They lost Oluwapu, Ryan Sutton as well, who was on decent money, medically retired. So there's money there. There's money there to spend. And if you looked at the team, what a couple of the knocks on the Bulldogs as a playing roster, a little bit light in the middle. So they went out and signed Leo Thompson. Mm-hmm. And then if you look at like the genuine spine game breakers with Tracy, Burton, Sexton, Marnie, one of the knocks or the observations were they don't quite have that level of brilliance in those spine positions. So they've gone and acquired that. I think any team would look to promote from within, and they have put a lot of money into their pathways, but it's naive to think that it's a singular approach. I think it's a dual approach.
A bit like the Roosters half situation now with Cherry Evans coming. This has an unsettling and a knock-on effect on the football club. Now, the improvement at Canterbury in the last 2 years has been off the charts. They've gone from a really ordinary football side to a contender, you agree? So there are a lot of players there, like Jacob Preston, for example, should be in Origin, but for suspension, he's on $350,000. You've got Max King, a front rower, he's on $400,000. He's in the Origin team where other front rowers are on $800,000. They've got Tracy, I'm just saying, it's going to be difficult to keep everyone happy.
Of course. Well, look what happened with Penrith. But I think with Galvin as well, one of the things that's probably not spoken about, they've actually got him at really good value because one team was prepared to pay over $1 million for his services.
Yeah, but that was overs, wasn't it? That was overs.
Well,
that
it
was
but they had to,
ridiculous money.
because they had to.
Yeah, because they had.
Yeah.
But maybe it was overs. But I think at $750, I think you've got good value there, especially when you take into a fact is they put the deal on the table of over $1 million. This isn't like speculation.
Yep.
This is actual fact. So the Dogs are a huge win.
Let's cut straight to the chase. I think a lot of people buzz what they're wondering about here is your take on Augustus Gould. So he's one of the most feared and revered figures in the game, hugely influential, and he's basically done an 18-month sell publicly through his media roles to Lachlan Galvin, yet at the same time using friendly media that he works alongside to run a narrative that, no, the Bulldogs have not and will not ever be interested. What do you make of the way that this whole narrative has played out?
Well, I do want to start off by saying, for all the issues I've had with Gus over the years, the job he's done at Canterbury since, I think, 2021, was it?
Yep.
I think he's done a superb job, and he hired Cameron Serrata. He's doing a great job, and Cameron attracted a lot of those players from Penrith, the Kickouts, the Burtons, the Crichtons, etc. However, I don't like the fact that he's created all this confusion, how he's basically misled. And Jimmy, I heard you earlier saying, look, people can just change their minds, which I guess we have to acknowledge that might have been the case. But he was so firm. When you say this guy is not on the radar, that should mean when you're telling a television audience, people tune in to Channel 9 on Monday nights to be informed by the people on the panel.
Yep.
Now, if you're telling him he is not on our radar, if you're telling the audience that, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, signed, sealed, delivered, Belmore, I don't think it's real good.
Well, Buzz.
I don't, Jim. I'm sorry.
Well, as a Bulldogs fan, I'm happy that he's prioritising me, the Bulldogs fan, over the Channel 9
but
audience.
You work for Canterbury. You sit here and bullshit to people about what's happening on there, or do you tell the truth?
I'd say what needs to. I'd say the right thing at the right time, and I think the right thing for Gus to say at that moment in time was to
That was a lie, Jammer. That was a lie.
Okay. Hear me out, Ben.
It was a flip.
Hear me out. Because, you can brandish it as a lie, or you can say, I'm playing the game and I'm closing the door, because if I leave that door ajar even slightly, then there's a big media pylon, and we talk about the effect of Galvin coming. Now it's a fact and it's done. We can deal with those ramifications. But if you go back a month ago and you start publicly talking about, oh yes, we're interested, or we're interested in any key player, you don't even know if it's done, and you have to deal with the ramifications and the innuendo and the talk. Where if you close that door, this may or may not come to fruition. But you close the door from a tactic, from a club-first mentality and point of view. That is the right thing to say. You can say it's a lie. You can say it's misleading, but it's the best thing for the club to do. And Gus is in that situation where he's got the members and fans of the Bulldogs or his audience at Channel 9. And for me personally, I'm glad that he's prioritised the Bulldogs and acquiring and making it as less volatile as it possibly needs to be.
What you're saying is he knew 4 weeks ago that he wanted.
I'm not saying that at all.
Well, you're indicating that.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that it was the right thing to say.
Look, can I say Gus has got a long history of, changing his mind. And I go back to Penrith, he sacked Ivan Cleary as coach, and he brought in Anthony Griffin. Then he extended Anthony Griffin, and then he speared Anthony Griffin a few months later. And then the club brought Cleary back, and a lot of the players like Regan Campbell-Gillard and Waka Blake, who Gus had signed on big money 4 or 5 year contract, Ivan then had to dismantle that squad, sell them to Parramatta to contribute. So all I'm saying is, if Gus, has changed his mind on this occasion, there's a history of that.
Yeah, there's a strong form line, but I think what you said off the top, Buzz, you're 100% right in that you got to give Gus incredible credit for the job that he has been able to do at Canterbury Bankstown, because they were coming off wooden spoons. He went in there. The joint was on the nose. He had to clean out the roster buzz completely. I remember reading that in your column where I think they got rid of 30 players or something like that, didn't they, over the course of 18 months. But there is no question that in his role, it can be a delicate balancing act between whether he's one of the figureheads of Channel 9, which is a major media organisation, or if he's a GM of football at Canterbury Bankstown.
And also, like, you're going to make mistakes. If you're in the industry for as long as he has been, like when he was at Penrith and maybe he signed some players for bigger deals than were necessary at the time and they maybe caught up and got some of those wrong, that's fine. And he would have made those mistakes at the Bulldogs. There were some players that they bought in that they had a little bit of a look at and thought, well, actually, no. Tom Amone is a prime example. Comes from the Lee Leopards. They thought he could be,
Who was the player who's just gone back to the Dolphins? He paid a $500,000 transfer.
Carl Oloapu, who unfortunately it's more of an injury concern as opposed to him not kicking on. It seemed like he had a very bright future, but there was medical issues.
Can I ask you a question? When you're in a playing group at a club like Canterbury, do players discuss money? What sort of salary?
Well, no, they do in Origin camps. Because that's become an issue previously.
Jimmy,
it's a delicate issue.
Yeah,
but just going back.
But I mentioned Max King's salary, an Origin front rower now, and I mentioned Jacob Preston's salary. And at the time when they came back, well, particularly King, right, and he had the knee and the
Achilles.
the Achilles, etc. And Jacob Preston was an unheralded sort of New South Wales Cup player at North Sydney. They are now worth, I think, double the money.
Absolutely,
they're being paid.
Of course, and they would know that, and they'd have plenty of people telling them that.
The club, I'm not sure, will be in a position to properly reward them because Leo Thompson is on big money. Well, and so too is Lachlan Galvin.
And that's the situation that the Bulldogs have created, and their form and their ability to consistently perform at that level has created this. But it might be the conversation is, if you want that, you may have to leave. You may have to leave. And just on players coming in, so I just churning over in my head, thinking back, Bulldogs in 2012, Hasler comes in. We were going relatively well, and we were looking good. We bring in two players that year that potentially could have upset the apple cart. It meant Bryson Goodwin didn't get to feature too much. He had a spleen injury. Well, that was his reason for going out the team. But we signed Kristen Inu and Sam Perrott. And what you do as a group, you look around and you go, well, is this making us better? Like if those two players came to us in 2012 and we improved with them in the team, they were on board with what we were doing. Jimmy, you can't stay in the same situation for the whole time. Like, players come and go. That's part of professional sport.
You're turning your back on a fullback, Connor Tracy.
He's
not Tedesco. He's not Edwards. What
do you mean by Connor Tracy? He's not going to lose his spot.
He is.
Connor Tracy at fullback.
Well, they're talking Burton to fullback, and that's what they're talking.